Racer Podcast, episode 126 for March 25th, 2018. I'm Steven.
And I'm Fake Crash.
So, Fake Crash, this is the part where the music would play, but since there's no music, I'm going to sing it for you live.
Thanks. I really appreciate that.
No, we're recording right now. Crash is still on his extended vacation, and the music will be added in post because right now I cannot get it to play on my laptop, which most of you are probably really happy about. The 5 of you who actually watch this on YouTube. So you don't really care right now.
And I would beg to differ. I would think that Crash doesn't think he's on vacation.
Oh, he's not?
Yeah, that's what he told us, right?
He's not on a cruise? I thought he was on a cruise.
On a cruise, he is. He's on a cruise of the Pacific. Yep. Yeah. Him and a bunch of other guys.
So he's on a vacation. Anyway.
On an extended cruise, yeah.
For those of you that don't know, my normal co-host is deployed currently with the Navy right now, and I've got my friend Doug from AmenMoto of Ham and Cheese Partnership, and you are officially cheese, correct?
I am officially cheese. Yep, Scott.
Is there any particular flavor of cheese that you are?
Probably Munster.
Munster.
Yeah, Munster. Yep.
And I would say Scott is probably some sort of smoked ham, correct?
Smoked ham, definitely smoked ham.
Smoked ham. Right? So Doug and I went on a trip, and kind of a trip, half of a trip. Doug had we were supposed to go together to the rally, the Trans Florida rally, and Doug had some family issues that he had to attend to, and I went alone, and I think Doug is probably lucky that he missed the first part of it because it was tough. But what we're going to do is a little bit something different today, and I'm going to let Doug ask me questions about the trip, and we'll talk about it, and I'll share it with you guys, and then we're going to talk about, after that, we all met in Daytona with one of our listeners and had an absolute blast in Daytona. So with that being said, Doug, take over.
Right. Thanks, Steve. So you ran the Trans Florida Rally, and this is something that you had done in the past. So tell us what the Trans Florida Rally is really about.
Well, the Trans Florida Rally is an AMA-sanctioned rally event that starts on the east coast of Florida in St. Augustine and ends on the west coast. And this time it ended in a place called Yankeetown. I did it 2 years ago, and it was in a place called Steinhatchee. But these are all kind of small west coast, toward the Panhandle, like fishing type towns, fishing villages. The rally is not necessarily a race, but it's one where you gain points. So when you leave on the first day, they give you a roll chart. You have no idea what the course is going to be, so there's no way of knowing where to go. You can't have it pre-planned in a GPS. They give you a roll chart. You have to have it in a roll chart holder on your bike, and you zero out your trip odometer, and it'll tell you. It'll say, go right-hand turn. It'll show you a little R, then it'll give you a street name, and it'll say 0.3, meaning 0.3 of a mile. You make a right-hand turn when you get there, and you keep following the roll chart until it tells you to reset. And it tells you to reset quite often. So it was broken up into sections, and I think the first day the sections were A through M, and the second day about the same. And the second day's route is different than the first day. So that's essentially what the rally is.
Right. And it goes across the state from east to west, from St. Augustine to Yankeetown. How many miles roughly is that across?
Well, it's not a direct shot. So I think we did 240 maybe the first day. And it's kind of, a lot of it's off-road. It was billed as being, and I don't know if this was ADV riders' sarcasm. The rally is put on by a group out of Jacksonville called CADS, which is Classic Adventure and Dual Sport. And they're a great group of guys. They produce a lot of rallies in Northern Florida and a lot of events. And this, like I said, this one was AMA sanctioned. But when they built it, it said adventure bike friendly, 2-up friendly. Yeah, I think that might have been sarcasm. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So kind of a good news, bad news thing, and we'll kind of start with the bad news. And it is a social event, and it's a fun 2 days. And I'm sorry I missed it, and then again, I'm not sorry I missed it. So let's talk about the bad news. So how tough is this thing?
For somebody who doesn't really spend a lot of time practicing riding on sand, it can be very, very tough. For the guys that are comfortable riding on sand, and I'm talking deep sugar sand, it's easy for them. And it's a humbling experience when you're fighting a motorcycle, and you can sit there and make all the excuses in the world and go, well, my bike's bigger and it's heavier. And then some guy on the same exact bike passes you doing like 65. And you're struggling to keep the thing upright. And, it really, there was a guy that I met there that was a cop from Pennsylvania, and his wife and him trailered the bike down. He had an Africa Twin, and the guy was a motor cop, real experienced, been a motor instructor for a long time. And he was the first finisher. He did it in the fastest time and got all the points. So on the roll chart, what I was going to tell you is there's sections where it'll say, take a picture of the yellow sign over the chimney. It's kind of vague. You kind of have to find what they're talking about when you get to the spot. And that's how you collect points. And this guy finished like in 4 hours, the whole thing, got all the points. He was flying on that Africa Twin. And we were talking the first night at dinner, and I was telling him all the challenges and problems I had. And he said, it really boils down to two things. He said it's riding sand is about keeping up a constant speed, not braking, letting the bike do its thing underneath you, kind of float, and actually having the stones to do that. And the way I broke it down was I know how to do it, and I've done it, and I did it on this rally, but I get worried because falling at 55 is a lot worse than falling at 20. And, I'm wearing full gear. I didn't have a neck brace on, but I was in a car accident in August, and I'm still hurting. And after the first half of the day fighting that bike in heavy sugar sand, falling a few times, it got even worse. I was like, my back is done. I can't do it anymore. So I ended up slabbing it back the first day, which is a little disappointing. Not back to the starting point, but over to Yankeetown. It was just tough. It was really hard for me to ride in the sand, in the amount of sand. And so I made it worse on myself because I'm a complete idiot. And I was riding with two guys that are much younger than me, and one of them was doing pretty well. The other one was falling down a lot, and they were on Triumphs as well, like you have, but they were on Tigers. So we got to a point where I was just getting physically exhausted. I was tired. We ran out of water. And I'm like, look, I'm looking at my GPS and I see what appears to be a paved road over here. I'm going to take this paved road out of this section, meet you guys, and we'll do the next section because I'm just whipped. Which would have been, in theory, would have been okay. But that road I was looking at, hey, look, I think we got somebody else on board.
Well, Jedz. Welcome, Jedz.
Jedz, what's going on, buddy?
What's
you got audio?
Going on?
Okay, good.
Hey.
All right. So we've got, yeah, we can hear you. We'll introduce you real quick here. We've got Justin at JedzMoto on. He's one of our faithful listeners, Patreon supporters, a member of our insane Slack team. And this is our riding partner for the second half of the trip. So we'll get to that in a minute. I'm just going over, Jedz, the ridiculous Trans-Florida rally and how much fun I had.
Right. Anyway. So yeah, you were going to try to take a little shortcut, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it turned bad.
Like you would catastrophically. Because first of all, the GPS lies. When it said it's a paved road, it's not a paved road. But the good news was when I finally found this road, and the confidence level when I left the two guys I was with, I'm like, I'm not going to kill myself. I'm going to pin it. So I got out of there pretty quick on the sand. I should have just kept going with them. I get to where this paved road starts, and it's not really a paved road. It's like a 2-track forest road, hard pack. So I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be easy. I'll ride this road all the way out. Well, I get about 5 miles down the road and realize there's a locked gate. I'm on private property. And I happened to go in when somebody had opened the gate and drove in. I followed this truck in, not knowing the guy had opened the gate going in. So now I'm kind of stuck. I had to turn around. I go back. I see the guy there, and he's like, where are you going? I'm like, I'm trying to find a paved road. He's like, well, you're on private property now. The only way you can find a paved road is make a right or a left at the end of the street. I said, how far is it? He goes, about 21 miles in either direction. And I'm like, 21 miles of sand. You know, this is crazy. So I figure, let me follow the route that they're supposed to be on. And it ended up going through this place called Belmore State Forest, which there was some great, really fast sections of forest road that were a lot of fun. And then some horrifically deep sections of sand that were rutted because they were doing logging in here. But the good news was I got out. The bad news was, again, I didn't listen to the roll chart and tried to take a straight shot out of that forest and hit 2 lock gates. So I ended up having to backtrack all the way back to where I started when I left the guys and actually follow the roll chart out. I found out later on there was only one way out of that state forest, and it was using the roll chart.
Right. So all that work, and you had to go back and do it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I put an extra like 15 miles of sand on. The funny part was, as I'm coming out where they exited, I see an ambulance and a fire truck and a sheriff's officer car. And I'm thinking, now keep in mind, I'm like 2 hours overdue from meeting these guys. And there's no comms, there's no phone service, nothing. And I had thought about bringing my InReach with me, which if I had, I could have easily sent one of the guys a text on the InReach without activating the emergency switch. So I get there and I see this ambulance and fire truck, and I'm thinking, oh my God, these guys called fire rescue. They thought I got lost, you know. And it turns out there was a guy that got injured on one of the small displacement bikes, and the 2 guys I was with were firefighters as well, so they had helped this guy. So everything was cool. Campground was really neat. Had a great dinner that night, and then unfortunately the next day I had to hightail it to Gainesville for a family thing, so I couldn't do the second half. But the weather was beautiful. Like the rally is a lot of fun, and you can actually skip some of the sandy sections if you want by just going to the next section on the roll chart and going to that intersection wherever it is. But I would recommend it. But the one thing I would tell you is get tires on your bike that are a true 50/50 tire. If you have a smaller displacement motorcycle, it's more fun on that. There were a lot of middleweight bikes on there and a lot of 250s as well riding it. But it's like you said, it's a social event. You know, there was a lot of great gear sponsors. I didn't stay for the awards because that was on the East Coast, but like Startron was there, gave us these cool hats. You know, they were sponsoring it. They had gift cards and all kinds of neat stuff. But if you're interested in this, join ADV Rider, advrider.com. Go on the Florida, they're in the regional forums. There's a Florida section, and just look for the thread on the Trans Florida Rally. There's photos and everything. It was really cool.
Right. So you mentioned, you know, we do have a lot of sugar sand, and I don't know if the listeners really understand how difficult it is to sugar sand. But if you think of a boat, right, and you're on a boat and you got to get it up on plane to get it to go fast on the water, motorcycle kind of does the same thing, right? You got to get it up on top of the sand. Now the sand is really, we've been in a drought, so the sand is really fine and it's deep and it's just spooky. And I know I've tried to ride a little bit of sugar sand and I end up dog paddling the whole way through, and that just wears you out, right?
It wears you out horribly, and it causes fatigue in your muscles and your legs because, you know, you don't want to touch the front brake at all. And when you even get a little bit of momentum going dog paddling, as soon as the front wheel catches something, you're not going fast enough to get on top of it, so it wants to pull the bike in one direction or another, and you're trying to keep it up, and it's exhausting.
Yeah, and you got to be up on the pegs. Really, you have to be up on the pegs, and the other thing is to let the bike go. If it's gonna go. You're gonna hurt yourself trying to keep the bike upright, right?
Yeah, and I don't ever try to, well, that's a lie. I tried to keep it upright a few times just because I thought I can control it. And that was just causing me to, you know, overextend muscles in my legs and my inner thighs, trying to hold up, you know, 600 plus pounds of motorcycle. Even the few times that I fell, I wasn't going fast enough really to clear the bike quick enough. So it's better to just get up on plane, like you said, get a speed going, kind of hold it there, stay off the front brake and shift your weight around, you know, and let the front tire do its thing. It's going to feel kind of wobbly. It's going to want to track in the dirt, and let it do it. I know these things. I know how to do it. It's just
It is very spooky, and it's something you got to practice too. You just got to get comfortable doing it. But it is really spooky to have no traction on the front wheel. On the bike, we'll just dance around underneath it doing its thing. But it, eventually it just wants to stay up. Once you get enough speed going, the gyroscopic effect takes effect.
Yeah,
And
the other issue was I was running street tires. So I mean, there were Continental TKC 70s on the back, which is considered a 70/30 tire. But the middle of it's like a flat tread. So I had very, very little traction in the back that was effective. So it was still fun. The guys said on the way back, the route was very little, if no sand at all, mostly forest roads. And it was a lot of fun. They ran into an encounter so by the time I got there, even skipping sections, it was like 5:30 in the afternoon by the time I got to the campground. These guys didn't show up till like 8:30. Now I was able to call them and get phone connections and talk to them. The last section, they ran into some hunters that blocked the road and said, "You guys can't be in here. It's private property." And it wasn't private property. It's a county road, but it intersects two private hunting leases. And these guys didn't want the motorcycles running there at night. So they blocked the road, and the guys had to kind of go around that. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. And there's no cost to this either. There's no charge. So you get meals. Well, they're not paying for the meals, but they have a dinner on Friday night at the American Legion in St. Augustine. And then there was a dinner Saturday night. You get the roll charts. That's what they do. They publish the roll charts out.
Right. And it is good fun. And I would recommend, you look for the rallies in your area. And it is a social event. And again, the important thing is not time, right? You can take as much time as you need, and you can take rest breaks and your water breaks, things like that. And, they refuel at lunchtime and things like that. So it really is, it's more of a social thing. So it's something I would look forward to doing soon.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll do the one next year.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get all over the guys from CADS and say, hey, let me know ahead of time, which is the sandy section.
Yeah.
I mean, I would like the opportunity to practice it more, honestly. But we don't really have that much area where we can access off-road here. And the ones we do is like the levee at Corbett, and it's not sandy, it's gravelly, which I'm no problem with. And any of the sand that I rode out west was not deep. So you didn't even really know you were hitting it. You were going around at 60 miles an hour. You hit a section of sand, the front wheel got a little kind of loose. You let it do its thing, and then you're through it. The deep sand is the scary stuff,
Right.
But yeah, like I would even check out any of the other CADS rallies, like the Polar Bear Rally, which we'll talk about that route later. But yeah, good times.
Yeah, sounds really cool. So you got through the Trans-Florida Rally, and then we got to Daytona.
Yeah, then we met in Daytona, and that was man, you got there before I did, right? And kind of hung with Jedz.
Right. So yeah, I hoofed up Friday morning. My first camping experience on a bike. So I had my my high vis dry bag on the back of the bike and headed up to Daytona. No issues, up 95, slabbed it up there, no big deal. Steve gave me the recommendation to try a camping area outside the track. We were going to try to camp inside the track, and Steve smartly said, let's try this other camp place. So I go in the place, and it's an RV camping place, big place. And the guy goes, yeah, I'll just put you between these two RVs. I was like, okay. so here we are in this RV resort with tents.
Yeah,
camped out for Friday night, Saturday night.
I think we were the only adventure bike. There was nothing but a sea of Harleys around us, right? And cruisers. Yeah. So all these hardcore riders are there in their fifth wheel toy hauler or their Class A toy hauler, with their awnings set up and chairs and barbecue grills and their Harley parked next to it. And we're in tents. And the first night, well, I mean, the real story is Jedz drove down from Vermont in like a snowstorm, right?
Yeah, it was a quite a ride. I left around 5 o'clock, 3 o'clock after work, and then drove straight down. Went through the first nor'easter that smoked the Northeast. So I was going through snow all the way till Virginia. And then I got down into south of Richmond, and then it finally let loose. But yeah, I drove down, and I think the worst part was getting the bike off the truck and it not starting, but it was a long ride
on Slack the whole way down. And not only is somehow or another Scott's tracking you. So we've got Scott posting your track with weather conditions. You're posting pictures of like driving snow. and then the bike doesn't start, right? And you had to effect some sort of repair.
Yes, I makeshift main harness repair with 1980s extension cord and some wire nuts.
The best part about this repair is that it's okay to strip some wire out of an extension cord, but Jedz leaves the female plug hanging out of the back of the bike.
Oh, it was a full MacGyver on that one. It was good.
You could have sold that, so many ways. Like, oh yeah, this is actually an electric Harley. It just sounds like a real Harley. You plug it in at night and it charges. But yeah, it was funny. So you guys got there first,
the Vermont block heater, right?
Right.
Yep.
So we showed up. We got there Friday night. So Jedz got there. You were there a day before. You were there Thursday, right, Jedz? I think.
Yep. I got in. Well, I technically came in Wednesday, but I was worthless, and I was going to go for a quick ride, and the bike didn't run. But Thursday was my first real day in Florida.
Right. So I get the camping all set up, and I head over to the manufacturer's midway at the Speedway, where all the motorcycle vendors are there. And Jed's sending me pictures. Hey, I made it to the Speedway. And I said, all right, let me grab some lunch and I'll come right over. So I drive in. There's a sea of motorcycles, and I park next to this red XS 1200. And whose bike would that be, Jedz?
What, the orange one?
The orange one. Yes, the orange one. So
yeah,
and we managed to find each other in a sea of motorcycles. It's pretty funny. So so we did a little bit of the midway, and then so Friday I took him on the Tomoka loop up by Ormond Beach, and I think you got to ride that the day before too, a little bit, right, Jedz?
Yeah, I did. It was actually the first ride I went out on. It was nice. It's gorgeous, actually. You wouldn't think it so close to Daytona, but that loop trail or whatever it's called is really sweet.
Yeah, the Tomoka State Forest. So we did that, and then back to camp, and Steve was there, and we got ready for.
Yeah, we made dinner the first night in camp, which was pretty funny because we got a little stove set up on the actual drive, the road of the camp, and we're making spaghetti, and people are driving by like, what the hell is going on? They were repairing a bike. We're just sitting around boiling water, cooking spaghetti, kind of hanging out and talking. And then Jed split, and Doug and I went off to our tents, and it got down to 35 degrees that night.
It was crazy cold. We woke up in the morning, and there's frost on the bike.
We woke up, it was, and the fun part for me was my air mattress kept deflating all night long. So it was, I had to make a repair, but I woke up probably around, every time I woke up, there was frozen breath coming out. I'm trying to cover myself with a sleeping bag. I think I got up around 4:30 in the morning, and I walk outside of my motorcycle, and I'm like, Doug, are you awake? And he's like, yeah, I'm awake. He's like, let's go get some coffee. So we get dressed, get on the bikes. We end up in a Waffle House at like 5 o'clock in the morning, and we stayed there till 7:30.
Oh, we were there for a long time.
Yeah.
Giving the waitress a hard time at the Waffle House.
Freezing cold. We're drinking a pot of coffee, had steak and eggs, and then we went to the so the plan Saturday was going to be, we were going to not really hang around Daytona for the most part and try to go for a long ride. And for those of you who've never been to Bike Week, it's really primarily a kind of a Harley cruiser event. The most of the tents in the vendor area repeat themselves. It's the same thing: leather, jewelry, sunglasses, protective bandanas, all the stuff that crowd wears. But the cool thing about it is a lot of the manufacturers are there. And one thing Doug and I really wanted to do was ride the new Goldwing. So we were the first ones at the Honda tent early. We signed up. There's usually a line. I was surprised there wasn't a line of people. We were able to sign up early and then go take off and look at a couple of the things. And then we came back and we both got to ride Goldwings, right?
Right. And we that video will be posted on AmenMoto within a few days, I suspect. So we did capture that video, and it was a treat. That was the first time I've ridden a Goldwing, and I was very impressed. Very impressive bike.
Man, I was like beyond impressed with that thing. I actually felt like I wanted to have one when we got done. And we both rode DCT versions, which you know, I didn't realize we kind of got a great introduction to the motorcycle, both from one of the people from Honda and from our tour guide, because Doug and I were the only two guys on the DCTs. We got a private instruction on how to work it. So the new Goldwing, if you're familiar with the older one, this one's 90 pounds lighter than the last year's model. And the DCT is really impressive in the fact that it's not just a regular automatic transmission. I've ridden some of their motorcycles in the past that had, like, I guess for lack of a better term, more like a centrifugal clutch, like riding a scooter. And I was really unimpressed and they were not fun to ride. But this is the second or third generation of the DCT. What did they say, Doug? I don't remember now.
It's third gen DCT. Right?
Third gen. And man, it was just the different modes for the drive modes were, you could tell that there was complete changes in the power delivery and the shift points. In any one of the modes, you can actually go into manual and shift the bike manually with paddle shifters. You can downshift or stay in the drive mode.
It can be in full manual or automatic and just shift up and down manually as you wish too. So that was, but missing the clutch lever was really odd.
Yeah, we kind of, both of us and everybody who rode it was talking about grabbing for the ghost clutch lever that's not there. And a couple of people had said to the Honda guy, you need to put like some fake clutch lever there, just something you can grab. I think you would get used to it rather quickly. It was, like I said, I'm going to let Doug talk about it more in their video, but if you watch that video when it comes out on AmenMoto, you'll get our impressions firsthand. So it was pretty neat.
Right. Being a more traditional motorcyclist, I was thinking that the 6-speed would be really the way to go. I know how to work a clutch and I'm familiar with the manual transmission and I'm comfortable with that. I watched a video from a guy that rode the DCT and then the 6-speed. So the DCT is a 7-speed, right? And he went to the 6-speed manual and he just said real quick, he said, there's no way I'd buy the 6-speed. He said, I'd go to the DCT right off the bat. He says, it's just too much work. He said, the DCT works so good that he said there was no question I would go DCT. So there you go.
I'm of the same opinion. And with the walking modes that the bike had, so not only does it have a reverse, but it has a forward slow walking mode. Like if you're moving the bike around in a garage, all the issues with having an automatic transmission seem to be solved.
Right.
Really impressive.
So Jedz, you got to ride some bikes too, right? What'd you ride?
I rode the Z900 and that was really nice. I would have to say it's a bit buzzy. I kept it in second gear because, that's me. And, but the motor's great. The transmission was awesome. And then I think the most fun I had were not actual demos, but was riding your folks' bikes, the 1290 and, and the Triumphs. It was just a lot of fun.
Yeah, the real demo. That was the real demo that came later.
Yeah.
So Daytona is a real treat. If you're Harley guy, obviously it's the mecca for that and Sturgis, right? But if you're not a Harley guy, I would recommend if you're going to go to Daytona, go the first weekend, not the second weekend, but the first weekend, because all the vendors are very fresh and they're helpful and they're not all jaded yet. And all the motorcycle vendors are there, and you can ride just about anything that they have. So it's a great way to get demo rides in and stuff. And the first weekend, everything's still a little calm. People aren't annoyed with you yet and all that. And so it was pretty pleasant, actually. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. The only issue I had with the demo rides was trying to get on the Z900S. That thing was booked out as soon as I came in, every time I looked for it. So, but yeah, you're right. It was a lot of fun. And the traffic wasn't nearly as bad as it was later in the week by the time I left. So
yeah, it gets pretty hairy. So we did the demo ride Saturday morning, and then Steve, what did we do in the afternoon?
I took these guys on a loop that I had saved when I did the Polar Bear Rally. It was a street ride up in North Central Florida, and it was typical Florida, straight roads, kind of boring.
Not maybe to get up there, but
again, I gotta thank the CADS guys, because this was when I first did this ride, I was like, I didn't even know these roads existed in Florida. And it was funny because Jedz was commenting throughout the ride, man, this is like upstate New York, or man, this is like Vermont. There was, you know, some little hilly sections, but we had a lot of great curvy roads. There was nobody on these roads either. And it was fun.
I was impressed. I mean, and then I was just trying to keep up with you. I was like, holy smokes, this guy can actually take turns. Not bad for a Florida rider, I guess there, Steve. But I have to say it was, I was shocked because everyone was telling me, oh, it's going to be boring riding when you go down there. And then next, you know, we're hitting these sweepers and we're hitting these hairpins. And I'm going, what the hell? I'm not used to this. And of course, you got to watch out for sand down there too, but phenomenal roads, phenomenal riding.
And very little traffic too.
Yeah, the section of Florida, there's not a lot of people it's not super populated. And it kind of, all the roads we were on followed lakes. So it was kind of driving around the residential roads around these lakes, and they're great roads. And I didn't know any of this stuff was there until I did the polar bear rally. And, you know, it's not typical of South Florida or even Central Florida, like the Orlando area. But even when we do the MSTA rides, we struggle to find some big sweepers, right, Doug? It's like we've got to go away from the city around Lake Okeechobee. You did that ride, right, Jedz? You were there with Scott.
Well, the Okeechobee ride? I didn't do the Okeechobee ride.
Oh, you guys didn't? Okay. So you even have to come off of Lake Okeechobee to find some of these roads. But this part in North Central Florida is a lot of fun. And, you know, the funny part is there's a lot of people. I know some of the guys I used to work with that retired up there. They live on roads that are just as sandy as the road we did in the Trans-Florida rally, but they don't own motorcycles because there's nowhere to keep them. You know, one of my buddies had a cruiser, and when he moved up there, he got rid of it because he couldn't park it at his house. There was no way to get it from the house to the street. He had like a mile and a half of that really deep sugar sand that was even tough getting in and out of in his vehicle. So we kind of hit it from a different end. We came in from Daytona, and the road going out there was boring. You know, it's a straight road. Once we got out there, it was a lot of fun. We'll definitely do that ride again, Doug. You know?
Yeah, actually, Steve's going to offer tours up there, and big credit to Steve because, you know, we're just following, right? So we're on these roads that have 15-mile-an-hour warning signs or 20-mile-an-hour warning signs, and you got to watch for the sand at the apex and things like that. So, you know, Jedz and I are both, you know, giant eyeballs trying to go through these corners, and Steve's just zinging through these corners on his KTM and reading the GPS on where to go because he's following a map on his GPS at the same time.
A couple times we had a U-turn, right? A couple times I went the wrong way, or I missed a turn, and we were following it on Rever. So, and if you want to ride these rides, they're on Rever. You can join Rever on a premium account. Look for me, and they're all posted. They'll say Polar Bear Ride or Daytona Bike Week 2018. The cool thing about Rever is you can follow the ride. It'll just say ride the ride. You pick up the track and follow the track. Now, it's not, when you're doing it like that, it's not a turn-by-turn instruction. You're just following a line on the map. But it'll leave your track as well. So for us, we kind of did the ride backward from when I did it the last time. Where we started was kind of at the southern end of the ride. Then we got up to the northern end and had to turn around and did the whole full circle. It was... We had a blast.
Yeah,
it was a lot of fun.
It was cool. It was kind of northwest of Palatka and northeast of Ocala, up in that area if you wanted to look on a map somewhere. And
yeah,
then
what really
up there.
Sucked was lunch. We stopped at a diner and got 3 cold burgers and with cold French fries.
Cold French fries.
Yeah, like they served them right out of the freezer.
That's the way to eat them there.
And I'm like telling these guys, this place is the best. We got to go here. They got the best burgers in the world. Soggy buns, you know, wet lettuce, cold burger. It was horrible.
So, Jedz, you got to do some exciting test drives while you're here, right?
Yep. Well, I was going to say the best part of lunch was leaving because I was on the KTM when I left. So
Jedz is screaming. I'm riding the XR, which is a bike I've always wanted to ride. I've always loved the Harley XR 1200. I thought it's a really cool bike. And honestly, I still like the bike. It was just different than what I'm used to. And the controls were different, getting used to them. Mm-hmm. But it's a fun motorcycle to ride. It really is. It's got a lot of character.
Well, I mean, that's what it's got, really. I mean, we took it down to Key West and it ate about 1.5 quarts of oil. And I mean, I mean, I don't know.
It's like riding my Moto Guzzi. It's not much different. The bike
Right.
doesn't particularly do anything great. It's just fun to ride. And, you know, you got that motor sound and the throttle response. But I'm trying to enjoy my ride on the XR, and you got Jedz in his helmet just screaming about how
And
fast the
laughing and
KTM is.
cheering on. Oh, it's the funniest thing because he's just hooting and hollering. And this bike is fast. How do I put it in sport mode? How do I turn off the traction control?
I was like, be very careful with the traction control.
Yeah. I'm like, where does it redline? You're like, I don't know. I'm like, let me find out.
Yeah. Well, I've got the rev limiter, like the lights. One thing about the KTM is you can change the setting on the lights.
Yep.
And when it comes from the factory, it's set much lower. I changed it to the higher setting for the rev limiter.
Mm-hmm.
I've bounced it off the rev limiter a couple times, but usually when the light comes on, I'll back off a little bit. You can power wheelie the bike easy in first and second gear, but as soon as the traction control kind of kicks on, it senses the wheel lift. I think we had this conversation on the bikes, and I think the way the KTM works is not necessarily the height. It has to do with the difference between wheel spin between the front wheel and the rear wheel. So once it senses that the spin changes, it'll start cutting power to the bike.
Yeah, it would float it would definitely float at a certain height and then kind of just come back down.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's fun, you know, especially when you're coming out of a corner and you want to blast it, it'll pick the front wheel up. I mean, I know a buddy of mine rode it with a traction control off. Spencer did too, and they lofted the front wheel pretty high on that bike, you know. And it's a big motorcycle. The first time I remember you commented too, that like how tall it was the first time you got on it. Yeah,
it's definitely like the adventure bikes, boys. I mean, I appreciate them, but I definitely not my style. I like to be sure-footed, smaller, lighter. I say that with the XR, but you know, my Bandit is probably 100 pounds less than the XR, and I feel way more at home on it. But it's high, but I could get past that because the motor is so phenomenal. The transmission was phenomenal. The handling was phenomenal. I didn't even really realize I was riding an adventure bike half the time once I was moving.
I think that if you rode the 1290 Super Duke, you would be completely addicted because that's a, you know, smaller, lighter, lower motorcycle with the same power plant and a bunch of refinements.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely on my list now. I mean, obviously, I'm going to probably just keep the XR for the rest of this year, get myself in a decent situation so I can private sell that. I'm not going to get what I want for trade. And then I'm not sure what I'm going to go for. I mean, I'm really like the Z900 RS, but I mean,
what did you think of Scott's T120?
Oh my God, I love that bike. I'm absolutely in love with that bike. It is awesome. It's just like it's a standard motorcycle, you know. It's just you're like you could go on it. You're like, yeah, you could turn this into a cafe racer and it would rock. Or you could be like, oh, you know what? I got to throw some saddlebags on it and throw a windshield on it. It's gonna rock. Or I could throw knobbies on it and I've put a upswing exhaust. It's gonna rock. So it's a true standard bike, and I absolutely loved it. And I tried stealing it from Scott as much as I could.
You know, and that's the beauty of a standard motorcycle is it can be whatever you want it to be. You're not pigeonholed in anything. It's not like buying a sport bike, you know, and it's kind of stuck in that job, or an adventure bike. The standard, I've seen plenty of guys, like you said, put a high pipe on it, throw knobbies on it, and go camping off their Bonnie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're great motorcycles. I want to ride Scots. I always get, the only thing is I get confused by the designations. Triumph's getting to be like Harley with all the different types of, you know, motorcycle classifications that they have for the Bonneville. There's like 7 of them now or something.
Yeah, and the Tigers are the same way, right? So
yeah.
Which is crazy. I can't imagine what it's like for a dealer to have to stock all these different versions of things. Must be really difficult for them. So
Jedz, what's on your radar? Like if you had to, if you were in a position right now to buy everything you've looked at, what would be on the radar now?
Ooh, that's a toughie. I mean, if money was no object, I would definitely consider a Super Duke GT. But you know, that's like 20 grand, and I'm not sure if I could swing that. So I'm really looking at a Z900 RS. I'm kind of holding out that the Indian FTR 1200 comes out this year. I was told by the Indian dealer that there's a good chance that FTR 1200 is going to come
tell
out.
us what that is, because I'm not familiar with what you're talking about.
Okay, so the Indian has been racing flat track and has been dominating flat track, not just because the racers are good, but the motors and motorcycles are just phenomenal compared to the Harley bikes. So this past, I think it was November, right before Christmas, Indian released a commercial of the new FTR 1200, which was most of the FTRs are 750s, the ones that they race, but it's a street version. They had it at Daytona on Main Street. I saw it, and then I went to a dealer just because I was ticked off and I needed to look at new bikes because the XR let me down so much. And the dealer told me that they were releasing the FTR 1200, which is a 11. I don't know what the size displacement is exactly, but it's a 1200cc V-twin 8-valve Scout engine, basically with a 6-speed transmission in a standard bike. Basically,
they talk about what the price was going to be.
I'm not really sure what it's going to be. They didn't really lead on, but I'm guessing from what he was talking about, it's going to be comparable to a Scout and a Scout Bobber. So that puts it in the $14,000 range. I'm guessing.
Really, that's the same bike an XR 1200 is, right? Because an XR 1200 is a replica of an XR 750.
Yeah, but with like 20 more horsepower and extra gear and water cooling.
Well, I mean, this is why it might do better than the XR 1200 did. I think that, again, part of the reason the XR 1200 wasn't a great seller in the U.S. for Harley Davidson was it's just not their market. Where I think Indian's smart by doing this because it's going to pull other people in, especially with the Scout. So I like the Scout platform a lot. I think it's a cool bike more than I do the Sportsters, you know?
Right. No, I agree. My only grievance with the Scout is that the forward pegs. If it was medium pegs or unpegged standard pegs, I'd probably own a Scout. The motor is just awesome, and the transmission is pretty decent. So, but it's just that forward peg position. I just can't get over that. It's a cruiser, and I'm not a cruiser guy. But this new FTR 1200 Scout, yeah, baby, that's what I want.
I'm the exact same way you are. I cannot ride a bike with forward pegs. It kills my back. It just does. It's counterintuitive to me to riding a motorcycle. And when I first sat on the Scout, I didn't realize because I never put my feet on the pegs. I just sat it at the Dania show last year. And the first thing that rolled through my head was, man, this bike is small. You know, it's a small motorcycle. And because of that low seat that it has on there, you kind of have to have the forward pegs. If they change the configuration a little bit, you would have more room for your legs with mid controls. Even bring those forward pegs back to like a decent position, it would be more rideable. But the other bike, the tracker version of it, the flat track version, is certainly not going to have, if anything, it may have rear sets, right?
Yeah, it's going to have a rear set probably. It's going to be standard pegs. I'm guessing it's not going to be a full-on R-styled bike. I don't think it's going to be a race bike. They're going to try to make it somewhat have some kind of appeal. Like you could go and ride it hard in the mountains, but you could also go camping with it or go do something with it. You know, I'm guessing it's going to be that's what's really selling right now is those standard bikes. Like look at the Bonneville, like how many variants of the Bonneville are there right now because of how successful it's doing. You know, that's what people want.
I haven't looked at is what the bobber sales were like for the Bonnie, because that out of all of them, that's the one I like the least.
I heard it sold well. I mean, it sold well enough that, you know, this Indian copied them.
Yeah, I mean, I get it's very much personal preference, and I've never been a big fan of like choppers or bobbers, or I mean, I get it,
right?
Like but
I mean, if I was going to get a bobber or get something like that, I might as well just go buy like a beater $3,000 to $2,000 cruiser, and then or even an old universal Japanese motorcycle like an 80s Suzuki GS or CB 750 or something, and just chop it down and then ride that.
Hell, you could probably pick up a big dog or something that somebody spent ridiculous money on for next to nothing right now, right?
Yeah. You could get right now. It's the time to buy. I mean, we've got maybe like seriously, 2 weeks. Once we start riding it, I start riding every day. That's when the prices start going up through the roof. So,
well, up in the Northeast, everyone tries to dump it in the wintertime. They just don't want to store it, or
yeah, basically. I mean, that's where I get all my deals. I mean, that's where I got those two CB 750s for the price of one. Plus, I got the price lower. I mean, you know, people are so desperate to move bikes. You can work that bottom dollar.
But you're a horse trader too. You're not paying anybody for what they're asking. You're going to go in there and wheel and deal, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
you know what you're looking at. You're not gonna walk out of there with something that you made a mistake on, typically, right?
I mean, I would love to say I've never like lost out on a deal. That's not true. I have, education's expensive, but generally I can go in and I can haggle pretty good. And most of the time, people that own motorcycles have no idea what the hell they have. And usually 8 times out of 10, I wouldn't say 9 times out of 10, but 8 times out of 10, for sure, that I've got into situations where people, they're like, oh, this bike, I've worked so much on it. I don't know what to do. Here, I'll take it for $250, $300, and I'll take care of it. And it's like a $50 problem or a carb clean, which I can do. And then next thing you know, I'm flipping it for like $2,500 in the spring.
Right. Well, I mean, that's what a lot of the guy, there's a, burn up company down here to Dave's credit. He does the same thing. He goes out when in the off season and buys motorcycles from people that don't want to take care of them, or they haven't been taken care of, or they've been sitting for years. Mm-hmm. And he'll come back and refurb them and get them ready for riding season, and then turn a profit. That's the American way, really. That's
right.
What business is all about. And I'm glad that there's a market that Dave does that kind of stuff, because he has some great motorcycles for people that want to just learn to ride and don't want to spend a lot of money. Mm-hmm. You can walk out of there with a couple grand and get a decent, vintage or classic standard motorcycle that runs great. So,
yep.
So Steve, you would ask Jedz what's on his radar. Steve, what's on your radar?
Honestly, Doug, I think it's a Goldwing, but it's going to be a while. It's like Jedz was saying, the cost is up there. The Goldwing's much more than the Super Duke, and I think maybe for me it would be a used one, something on the secondary market. I'm getting kind of, and I'm going to say this publicly, and I'm going to regret saying it, but I'm bored with the Moto Guzzi. I don't ride it as much as I used to. I'll probably regret selling it if I do sell it, but it's paid for. So I don't know. I'm thinking the Goldwing, but it would be a while. It wouldn't be anytime in the near future. If there was something in the near future, it may be some sort of small or middleweight dual sport of some type.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm thinking too. If the Explorer's a 1200 and it's a big bike and it's a little difficult off-road and stuff. And I don't do a lot of off-road, but I'm thinking as like a large sport touring and then mid-size Explorer bike, something like that, some sort of mid-size,
like in a 650 or 700
650
range?
to 800 range. Yeah. For an adventure bike. Yeah.
Yeah, that might not be a bad idea too. I mean, I think I would certainly be able to do the Mid-Atlantic BDR on my bike now. I did sections of the Colorado and the New Mexico BDR without a problem, but and the Mid-Atlantic is rated as an easy ride, so I think it would be fine on that big bike. But the only negative downside to owning a dual sport in South Florida is there's nowhere to ride. We would have to go to like Ocala area to do any riding.
Yeah, that's true.
Bad part about it. Whereas people in other parts of the country, like I watch, I follow Spencer Hill, the gear dude, on a bunch of different outlets, and every weekend there's someplace in the Pacific Northwest off road. It's just outside the back door, and it's right there.
Yeah. We have to go hours just to get to somewhere where it's quasi tractable.
Yeah,
Plus, they're just not friendly. Off-road areas are just not friendly in South Florida. There's nothing in Palm Beach. There are no dirt areas you can go really and ride a bike.
No, because people who don't understand Florida, there is no public land like there is out west, because everything's either a management area, which is highly regulated by the state because there's hunting that goes on there, or it's private land. Any public area is just not open to off-road vehicles here.
Right. So, Jedz, I went and sat on a new concourse yesterday, and
you did?
Didn't like it.
Yeah.
I did not like
It's all right. I mean, I wasn't completely in love with mine, but it did the job really well. You know, I could put big miles on. It's it's a horrible bike for low speed maneuvering. It's just, you know, it's a 700-pound machine, but that ZX14 motor is phenomenal.
Right.
You know, but yeah, there's a reason why I didn't get another one after, you know, the mishap from the first one. So
right. Anyway,
How,
so Steve,
how was the seating position on that, Doug? Did you think it was low?
the seating was high-ish, and the foot position was good. I felt a little more bent over, and maybe that's because I'm spoiled from riding an adventure bike so much. But I don't know. It didn't feel. I felt bent over more than I thought I should.
Was there any
And then
adjustment in the bars to be able to pull the bars back?
No, not that I could tell. It had the cast bars that were bolted to the head, so it's not like a traditional bar.
Right. Well, I mean, Jedz, I don't know if you noticed this or not. My bike had risers on it.
Yeah, and I do too.
Yeah.
I did it, but man, when one moving, like your bikes, both your bikes are exceptionally comfortable. The wind protection is great on both of them too. That's nice. I like the nice standard position.
Right. And then I sat on the FJR, and I like that much better. So.
Yeah, that was a bike I thought I was going to like, and I rode a buddy of mine's and didn't really care for it.
I'm the same. I was the same way too, Steve. I test rode. I was looking for a replacement for my FZ1. I got a B King, which was not a good replacement, and then I traded that in for the Concourse. But I test rode the FJR 1300 and the ZG 1400, the Concourse 14, and I did not like the FJR. I just don't know what it was. I don't know if it's because it was only a 5-speed or just how it felt or how the motor was, but I like the Kawasaki more. I don't know.
Funny too, because I couldn't put my finger on it. I had the same conversation with a friend of mine. He's like, well, what didn't you like about it? I'm like, I don't know. I just like the whole package didn't work for me.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was a combination of seating position, the way the bike worked. And a buddy of mine used to race, amateur and CCS, and he would flog that thing. I mean, ride it like crazy. And I got on it a couple times. I'm like, yeah, no, I'll take my bike back. Yeah. And I think at the time I might have had an ST 1300,
Yeah. They're a little more, I think they're a little more buzzy than should be acceptable on a touring bike. It's just, they all have straight cut gears in the transmission. So they're kind of whiny, and I don't know. It's Yamaha, so it's going to last and it's going to run forever, but it's just missing its refinement. That's just Yamaha.
The issue that I had with his too, there was some excessive heat, but at the time with the ST 1300, I had the same problem, just in a different location. The heat off the Yamaha was coming up onto my legs, but in the ST was right between your legs. It was a nut roaster for sure. But the ST 1300 I could ride all day long, and it handled well for a 700-pound motorcycle. It was pretty fast. It didn't do anything horrible. It was just a little bit boring, but I'd rather take boring and feel comfortable than on the FJR where I didn't feel comfortable riding it for whatever reason. And the other thing too is when they first came out, that whole thing with Yamaha kind of pissed me off a little bit about you got to put $500 down to even see one. They didn't have any in the dealership. You couldn't even look at one at the time when they first came out.
Really?
Yeah. When the FJR first came out, you had to put $500 down and order one. There were none in the dealers. That was the
That's
first year.
crazy.
Yeah,
that's
stupid, I thought. So how about you, Doug? What's your
Well, that's kind of why I was sitting on the Concourse, and so I was thinking like a Concourse or an ST. And then for the adventure bike, I really like the Africa. I've always been a Honda guy, and I really like the Africa. I like everything I've heard about it, so kind of leaning that way.
I didn't like it until two things. One, I rode a bike with DCT and saw, how it was. So the possibility of it being better with the DCT, and two, how it embarrassed the living crap out of me on, the Transporter Rally when these guys are flying past me on fully loaded Africa Twins without even struggling, just hauling ass. And the guy, the cop that I was talking to, he was the first guy back on an AT. You know, and this is a guy that's got years of experience on motorcycles, which, you know, motor cops are phenomenal riders. Their schools are very tough that they go through, and he's an instructor. And he was like, "Yeah, it's one of the best motorcycles I've ever owned."
Yeah.
So that's a good endorsement, I think.
Yeah. Yep. I agree with that.
Now I want to actually test ride one, but we didn't. The funny thing is, when we went to Daytona, there wasn't a single one available for a test ride.
Yeah, they were just pushing
Gold
the Gold Wings. That was
Yeah.
it had, I don't know, 10 or 12 of them there. I mean, it was and a couple of VT 1200s, and that's about it, right? So
yeah, that 1200 that's supposed to be like the Interceptor replacement, was that a VR 1200?
VR, yeah, the VR 1200, yeah,
the VR 1200, and they had maybe one or two sport bikes, and that was it.
Yeah.
So you're gonna ask me something else, Doug, before I cut you off?
Oh no, I was going to ask about the BDR, right? You'd mentioned BDR here.
So we have the Backcountry Discovery Routes, a nonprofit organization, released the Mid-Atlantic BDR in the 1st of February, and it is open, ready to go. They published a set of maps for it. You can download the GPX points tracks for free at ridebdr.com. That we are actually co-sponsoring the movie premiere this Thursday coming up at WMR Competition Performance in Stuart, Florida. It'll be one of their bike nights where they have food and beverages and stuff, and we're going to be premiering the movie there in conjunction with those guys. So if you're anywhere in the South Florida area, check it out. Come on over to WMR. They're in Stuart, right off Interstate 95.
Right, you're doing an autograph session too, I heard, right?
No, that's not true. And not
oh, well, I'm not going then.
I think they hired. I think I got to clean up afterwards. Like they said, we'll let you come, but you got to pick up all the paper plates and the pizza and stuff left over. Yeah, no, it's funny because WMR is a great dealership for. It's one of the largest KTM dealerships in the United States, but up until recently, all they sold were dirt bikes. They were. You know, they've got a competition race team out of there. They also have a brand called Nihilo, where they manufacture parts for KTMs. They manufacture anodized parts and stuff from a like a grip tape type of material for protection on the motorcycle. So Nihilo's housed, their manufacturing facility is in the dealership, and they're a KTM Husky dealer only, but they're moving very much into the adventure market now. So with the mid-size adventure bikes that KTM and Husky produces and the full-size ones, and even the street bikes, they're really pushing more for that. It should be fun. I'm going to post again about it on the webpage, put the flyer out. You're going to be there, right, Doug?
I will be there.
Jedz,
I'll be signing autographs. I don't know about you, but I'll be there.
Yeah, you'll have cheese. Cheese will actually be passing out slices of processed cheese.
Munster cheese, yeah.
Jedz, you'll be driving there too, right? You'll be coming up in the morning and
yeah. It's just a few hour trip, no problem.
Right.
He would, but his bike broke. He couldn't make it.
Shut up. The Harley's going to be sidelined much this year.
So we had the one thing we didn't really discuss much after we did it was keep in mind that Daytona during Bike Week is like packed. Every place you go, you got to wait in a line. It's just packed with motorcycles. You can't forget being in a car and trying to drive around Daytona during Bike Week. So Saturday night after this long ride, we decided we're going to go get something to eat. And Doug finds us this restaurant in Daytona, well, Port Orange, but it's like right south of Daytona, that nobody was in. There wasn't a single motorcycle parked in front of this place. It was a traditional Chinese restaurant. And the woman there, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but anything we wanted to order, she like changed our mind for us. Told us, no, that's not good. Get this.
Yeah. I don't think I actually ordered what I was thinking I wanted that day.
No, we all got something different than what, because she said, no, if you like this, order this. And I'm like, okay, I'll try that. But the owner even came over to us and he's like, how did you find out about this place? I guess they're not capitalizing at all on the Bike Week crowd. There was nobody in there. It was empty.
No.
Right. and for the life of me, I can't remember the name of the place. All I can remember is Happy Ending. That's all I can remember. And obviously, that's not the name of the restaurant, but
She kept asking us about that. Was that some sort of dessert or something? I've never heard of it.
it wasn't quite on the menu. And she said, "No, you don't want that." So.
You want happy ending? I'm like, is that pudding or something? Is it? Do I get a cookie with it? What is that?
No, it was a nice way to finish up a long day because Steve and I had been up all night the night before, freezing to death, and then all the coffee, and then the demo rides and the ride up north, and we did 420 miles, I think we did during the day, and then it was actually nice to be in a nice quiet restaurant and lots of really good food. So
yeah, no, it was great. It was great. We didn't have to wait in a line or anything like in the typical places for Bike Week. Like a chicken wing joint or a barbecue place. It was nice. It was a good find for Doug. But you know what? That trip was a lot of fun. I mean, that's the way Bike Week should be. And I think if we do it again next year, it's going to be the same thing. We'll do a ride, away from the hustle and bustle of Daytona, especially from the downtown area.
Right.
Well,
so I really liked riding in Central Florida, man. It was gorgeous. I like that a lot. So I'm down.
I have to admit that I've put 14,000 miles on my Explorer and have never ridden anything like that yet, which is a really sad thing for me. But just the curves, just going back and forth in the curves and accelerating out of the corners and stuff like that, which is really what you're supposed to be doing on a motorcycle. I really haven't had a chance to experience that yet, so it was a real treat.
Yeah, you actually got to use your tires the way they were designed too, because we tend to square off tires in Florida really quick. There's no real areas to get any of the corners or the sidewall of the tire. It's non-existent here. Everything's in a straight line. It's just like the exits and entrance ramps to the turnpike are 95. That's about it.
Right. So maybe in October for Biketoberfest, we might be able to organize something then. And certainly for Bike Week next year, we can organize something.
Yeah, we can actually change that route around a little bit. Now that we have it in a couple different locations, I might import it into Base Camp for Garmin and switch it around a little. I think we can come up with a really good ride, and we'll open that up to anybody who's listening. We'll have it on. I can export it out as a GPX file, put it up on Rever. So that's the beautiful thing about Rever is we can share all that stuff. It was a fun ride. If that ride, Doug, existed an hour from where we live, I would be doing that a lot more
every day.
Yeah. No, that's why I envy Jedz, really.
Yeah, I know. Jedz is out his door and he's riding that.
Yeah. No offense, better than that, but
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. Yep, Green Mountains. Yep. So, Steve, in 2019, why don't we do like a cafe racer tour of the BDR? Right, the Mid-Atlantic BDR runs from North Carolina to the top of Pennsylvania, and maybe we can organize something.
I'm really thinking that we can make that possible. I think we've got some guys that are close to that area. I think that we would be looking at the end of September, early October, and we could definitely make that happen. I'm excited about that. I might be riding the Southern California BDR at some point this year, maybe before it opens up with Spencer. He was talking about trying to ride the Mid-Atlantic this year, but I don't know if that's going to happen. But either way, I want to try to organize something for next year for the podcast, and whoever wants to come out and meet us on this thing, even if you can only do a section of it, like if you live in the Northeast, let's say you're in Pennsylvania somewhere or in Virginia somewhere and you want to do a section of it with us. I think there's 9 sections to it. It would be great. We'd have a lot of fun. So,
we just pick up people on the way. They're kind of like a Forrest Gump, by the time we end up done running, right? We got a whole crew of people with us.
Yeah. And for us logistically from Florida, it's the most driving for us, and we'll probably end up trailering the bikes in mass, like a large trailer, right, Doug?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. We'll trailer up.
You can split driving duties, get there, and then not, ride. Even if we don't do the whole thing, if we only are limited to like a week and do some of the sections, I would be really happy to do that too.
Right.
I think we're going to need at least minimum. If we break each section up by day, you're looking at 9 days to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Jedz can meet us. Come the opposite direction down from the top of Pennsylvania and meet us halfway.
Yeah, but I don't do dirt, boys.
It's not.
Well, it's about time you learned.
Honestly, Jedz, I think if once you see the BDR movie, I don't think there's a lot of dirt in this. I think it's mostly gravel. You know, I think it's 4 service roads. I don't think it's going to be like sandy, loamy type of dirt. There's some sections where it might be a little bit ruddy.
Yep.
But
Alex from Maryland Moto is trying to convince me that I should re-scrambler the tucks and do it with the tucks.
Yeah, that would be cool.
That would actually be a lot of fun, probably.
So the funny part there is re-scrambler it, right?
Yeah, because I scrambled it and then it unscrambled
it.
Yeah, I actually saw pictures of that. Scott showed me when you did have it as a scrambler.
Yeah. It was
the look. Scott wasn't what he was kind of going for too on his.
Scott was trying to make a Bonneville out of a TUX.
Yeah. Kind of hard, actually.
He got smart and just bought the Bonneville.
Yeah. Hey, you know, I think Scott went about it the right way, though. Scott bought a smaller displacement motorcycle and he put a ton of miles on it and figured out what he liked and then went out and got what he liked, you know, instead of going and buying a big bike that, like a guy that goes out and buys like a Dynaglide or a 1000cc sport bike or a huge adventure bike and then realizes this isn't what I want. You know, it's too big or it's not what I thought it was going to be. I think I hear that a lot with guys on sport bikes, especially the guys that are late bloomers to motorcycling that are my generation or maybe 10 years younger, and they go out and they buy something that's in a tuck position and they're like, I really can't ride this and it's not comfortable and I can't take anything on it or take somebody with me in a comfortable way, and they end up dumping them.
Yeah. Yep. That happens a lot.
So let's Jedz, you've got like, you're doing some motorcycle related internet stuff as well?
Yeah, so I buy sell motorcycles a lot, and so much so that the state of Vermont said that I should get my dealer's license. So hence JedzMoto. So technically my business name is JedzMoto. I buy motorcycles and sell them, and I don't try to jack the price. I try to get people that want to ride on a good bike for a good price. But yeah, I started a YouTube video. I'm still working on getting my homepage website set up. But yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to get folks excited about motorcycling. I mean, that's what we are, right? We're ambassadors to this, and I figured I'd get involved and try to do my part.
I think everybody should own a motorcycle. Honestly, I think it's the thing that keeps you sane in life. When you're stressed out, or it's just so much nice to go for a ride and let it all go away.
Amen.
Yeah, when I was on the ride with you guys on Saturday, the only thing I was thinking about was the road. That was it, and you know, and the chatter we had on the comms. So, Doug, tell us where we can find you.
We're on AmenMoto, so get on YouTube and do a search for AmenMoto, and I think there's AmenMoto.com, and look for some of our videos there. I just gave Scott a whole bunch of material, including our ride up in northern Florida and all that. So Scott's got a lot of editing to do. So look for a bunch of new videos to come out on AmenMoto.
Produce some fun videos. It's a lot. It's a lot of fun to watch the videos from AmenMoto.
Yep.
I know ours are mostly boring and like some gear reviews in these shows, which nobody watches on video. Except now that Jedz is on, they want to see what Jedz looks like, so they come on there.
That's a mistake.
Yeah, the number one polling reason for watching is what will Jedz do next. So
why can't Jedz ride with 2 wheels on the ground?
Right. Why is this? We were supposed to have Jessica on with us today, but she's got family stuff going on. And with Crash being deployed, she's holding down the fort by herself. So hopefully we'll have Jess on the next show with us, because she's way better looking than we are and more fun to watch.
Yeah. So Crash has no motorcycles now, from what I understand it, and Jess has 2.
Yeah, I don't think Jess will ever give up that Bonneville. That's now Jess's motorcycle.
That is now Jess's motorcycle.
Yeah, by the time Crash gets back from deployment, that thing's going to be pink with sparkles all over it. And
Yeah, he's not getting it back. He's not getting it back.
No, but I also think this is thankfully, hopefully Jess never listens to this show, but I think this is a calculated move on Crash's part. Genius calculated move.
Yes.
It is
access to this bike, right? He's going to come back and he's going to act like he's upset. What do you mean I can't have my motorcycle back? And he's going to pout for a couple days and he's going to go, well, I guess I got to buy a new bike.
Oh, they'll have the deposits already done and the bike's in storage somewhere.
Right. He'll buy it while he's on the deployment. Yeah, this is what's going on. Exactly.
I can't have my bike. All right. 2 hours later. Okay, here we go.
Yeah. By the way, I found this while I was on the ship. It was for free. And I was on the ship.
It fell off the truck.
I used to tell my wife all the time when I would come home with either guns or cameras. For me, it was always something like this, and she would look at me and go, I've never seen that before. Like, when did you get that? Like, she had a mental inventory of everything that was in the camera bag or in the gun safe, and she'd be like, what is that? I've never seen that. Oh, I picked that up. It was like $50. Everything I owned was $50. It was like $50. I paid $50 for it.
That's a very dangerous game to play, by the way.
Really? Why? Because they'll start spending the same amount of money?
So real quick, real funny story. A neighbor of mine, firefighter, he's into model airplanes and he keeps buying all these model airplanes. He's into jets and they're very expensive, right? So he come home with a new model airplane. His wife say, "Whoa, what did that cost? $250." And he go, another airplane come, $250. That's kept happening for weeks and weeks and weeks. He comes home one day, there's all new furniture in the living room. And he goes, "What did that cost?" And she looks at him, pauses, and goes, $250. So be very careful with that game.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, so you can find us everywhere on the interwebs as usual. We're on Twitter as Cafe Racer Pod. We don't do a lot on Twitter except retweet stuff from Instagram, and we're Cafe Racer Podcast on Instagram. Cafe Racer Podcast on Facebook. If you want to give us some feedback, you can reach us at feedback@caferacerpodcast.com. And we also have a phone number, which is, I never have it ready, but I'll tell you in a second. You can find us on YouTube at Cafe Racer Podcast and on iTunes. And if you like the show, please give us a like on iTunes. If you don't give us a like or give us an unlike or whatever. But we appreciate any feedback you have. You can send Crash or I a letter to either crash@caferacerpodcast.com or steve@caferacerpodcast.com. And I don't know if I can tell you what the email is, the phone number, but we will accept phone calls. And
I'd also like to mention, while Steve's looking that up, I'd also like to mention that the Patreon members get subscription to Slack, and the conversations on Slack have just been blowing up lately. It's very, very entertaining. So
you guys
the Patreon is worth every penny just for the Slack entertainment. So
let me tell you something. I got a new phone the other day, right? My phone camera died on my iPhone. So I got a new iPhone, and I reloaded everything. The phone was backed up. I set everything up, and like a day later, I'm thinking, in less than 24 hours, I'm like, man, Slack has been really quiet. What is going on there? So I go into Slack. I wasn't logged in on the new phone. As soon as I logged in, like 285 messages. You guys generated 285 messages in less than 24 hours. And yet yesterday I'm riding and I'm like Jedz and what's his name from BMW?
Wes,
back and forth, Jedz West, and the alerts come on my phone, so they pop up. I don't know what you guys were doing, but it was nonstop for like 2 hours. Do you guys work or anything, or have jobs, or like?
Yeah, it's my sanity at work.
That's what everybody does during work, Steve.
Listen, I tell you what, man. For the price of whatever help you give on Patreon, you get to access to Slack, and it's a ton of fun. And there are some guys besides Jedz, there are some guys on Slack like Steve Case that build motorcycles, know what they're doing. I think we've got a pretty good database of guys. If you had questions about something, you can come on and ask. Somebody on Slack's got an answer, right?
Yeah, and just as an example, Scott, his son's buying a motorcycle, and Scott said, "Hey, what's this bike worth?" No, boom, within seconds. Yep, this
Yeah.
is retail. This is what you should pay for it. Blah blah blah. Great.
You know what's funny is Wes contacted me privately on there and said, "Hey, can we open this up to other people?" And I said, it's a value for the Patreon people. If they want to be on there, they got to donate. I said, why? And he goes, well, we tried to do it with the BMW owners group, and you guys have built an incredible community on here. It failed on the BMW owners group. So that's because of you guys. I thank you guys for keeping the conversation always going on Slack. And we've planned trips, we've planned get-togethers. There's all kinds of stuff that goes on there. And I thank you guys, because you support us with the donations through Patreon that helps us keeping the lights on here. And on top of that, you keep the fun going at Slack.
It's definitely fun.
Yeah.
Great people. Great people.
All right. So the phone number, area code 561-285-7190. Leave us a message, 561-285-7190. Even if you are mean and say you hate us, go ahead and send it, and I will send it right over to Chuck and Todd at Wheel Nerds.
That's great. They'll make short work of that.
Once again, guys, thanks a lot for listening, and see ya.